Namaste friends, welcome to another satsang on Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri's Holy Signs. As always, we'll begin with a brief chant. Let's sit briefly now, pausing, resting in God's love, offering a silent prayer to Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri and to our lineage of Gurus, Mahavatar Babaji, Lairi Mahashai and Paramhansa Yogananda. Om Shanti. So friends, welcome again to another beautiful morning discussing this wonderful book, Holy Signs by Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri. I think I forgot to check the video, but I think I finished the chapter 2 of this book that is called The Goal, or at least I discussed to the extent to which I was capable of discussing. So the first chapter of this book is called The Gospel, as I was already discussing. That deals primarily with the Sankhya philosophy that comes from India. And the second chapter, that is called The Goal, is more aligned with Vedanta. It describes divine consciousness itself, again in abstraction, describing creation and the absolute truth that we are aspiring towards. Now we come to what I think is a more interesting part of the book. I mean, I should say everything is very interesting, but this is a more practical part of this book. This is almost as I think it is the second half of the book that we are entering right now. And we are going to start with chapter 3. And chapter 3 is called The Procedure. And here is where, in the second half of the book, is where we actually come to the science of yoga. And from this point on, a lot of things that Yukteswar Giri is talking about deeply are meaningful in how we practice, how we live these truths, what are the teachings of yoga that we want to live by. So I'm going to start by reading the very first verse, verses 1 to 4 of chapter 3. I'm just going to read the English translation. Yajna, or sacrifice, means penance, deep study, and the practice of meditation on Om. So there are 3 words, Sanskrit words, that Yukteswar Giri gives here. Yajna, or sacrifice, consists of 3 things. And the 3 things are tapas, or penance, swadhyaya, or study, and practice of meditation on Om, which he calls Brahma Nidana. And then he describes these 3 very briefly. Penance is patience or even-mindedness in all conditions. Swadhyaya consists of reading or hearing spiritual truth, pondering it, and forming a definite conception of it. Pranava, or meditation on Om, the divine sound, is the only way to Brahman or salvation. So I'm just going to briefly touch upon this. I was going to say self-explanatory. Yes, the truth he's saying is very simple, although it may be difficult to practice. But I think there is enough of meat in what these verses literally translate to for us to work on, or at least to understand the essence of these sutras. The first one he calls tapasya. That's how Patanjali puts it, this virtue of practicing austerity. Interestingly, Yukteswar Giri does not translate it as austerity. He translates it as patience. And that in itself is a great clue. I think, as I was starting to say in the beginning of this Holy Signs, this book itself, the English translation of this book itself happened under the supervision of Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri. So even the English words in the translation, one does not have to doubt that it actually was approved by him. So this translation, this verb or this word patience as a translation for the word tapasya is very interesting for us to note. Often tapasya or austerity is connected with putting oneself through some kind of difficulty. In the Catholic faith, there are a lot of practices in which, whether it's self-flagellation or other ways of even inflicting pain on one's own body, and it's an extreme form of tapasya where one is putting themselves through a spiritual discipline in order to come out of it, perhaps more purified. And to understand it as patience is actually a much more helpful explanation, because the difference between austerity and patience, what is the difference? Austerity is something that you seek, that you want this, whatever it is, I'm going to take cold water showers from tomorrow. I'm not going to eat any sugar. I'm going to climb this mountain, or I'm going to fast for these many days. All these are austerities that people undertake, and they are all valid forms of tapasya if done with the right spirit. However, if you think of it as patience, you don't think of taking a cold water shower necessarily as patience. The reason why the word patience, I think, is very helpful for us to work on ourselves, because oftentimes in life we don't have to seek these tests. These tests are automatically lying in front of us. That things that we seek are perhaps even sometimes driven by the whims of our own ego. So we don't necessarily have to go through a lot of effort. What is the tapasya that you need to do? If you were to think about it as patience, maybe be a little more patient with your spouse who might be annoying you sometimes. Maybe a little more patience with somebody that you don't get along with. Maybe a little more patience on this hot day when it's so sultry and still you have to go outside and work. Just be patient. The weather will shift, and it's okay. You can still do your work. You don't have to become restless or become lazy. If it's too cold, you don't have to fix it right away. Just be a little more patient. You don't have to layer up. You often notice people that are constantly tinkering with their temperature in the car as they're driving. Oh, it's a little too cold, a little too hot. Just trying to get it all perfect. They'll turn the AC on, and then after some time they will feel, oh, that's too cold, let's turn it down. Oh my gosh, it's too hot, let's turn it up. That's what Yukteswar Giri is talking about. Let's be more in our own spine, not constantly trying to fix the world around us, and practice patience and even-mindedness. And that is tapasya, and that's how we draw that energy inside, and that's how we offer sacrifice or yajna. Again, interestingly, he uses the word sacrifice to describe yajna. Another word that is very helpful to also understand the concept of yajna is offering, because all these are ways in which we offer ourselves into spirit. The second one is swadhyaya, and in the explanation for this, he gives three Sanskrit words to describe swadhyaya. Swadhyaya again comes from the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali also talks about this. It is often translated as self-study. Here, Yukteswar Giri calls it just study. And the three parts of this are Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. And I'll explain all three of them. Shravana means hearing spiritual truths, seeking, reading, and absorbing spiritual truths. Manana is deep attention, cognizing it, absorbing it deeply within ourselves. And Nididhyasana is forming our own conception, internalizing that truth. So the three parts of study, it's not just I'll keep this book by my bedstand and I'll browse through the pages and today I read 40 pages of the Holy Science. That's not what we are aspiring towards. I've read through this book many times. It's such a small book. One could easily read it within 2 hours, because most of the verses are in Sanskrit. There is translation. There are so many paragraphs and pages. Actually, the amount of text is not all that much. But the study that we want to do is not just read the book. The first part, of course, is reading the book, receiving the vibration. The second part is concentrating, cognizing with deep attention, trying to absorb what is being said in the book. And the third part is actually internalizing that truth, forming our definite conception with clarity of mind, trying to understand to the best of our abilities and to make it our own. That's what Nididhyasana truly is. So there are all these parts to study. It's important even in our own life when we are studying or receiving spiritual truths, whether it's through a YouTube video, whether it's through an audio podcast, or whether it's through a book or whatever form we are seeking that truth and receiving it, we have to digest it. I think Yoganandaji called it spiritual indigestion. Sometimes when people just keep buying more and more books, they read this, they go to that class, they go to this class, this teacher and then that teacher, they are not truly transforming or able to integrate all the things they are receiving. And that's why Swadhyaya is very important, so that we can digest and absorb all the things that we are receiving and that we are being given. The third one is Pranava, the meditation on Om. He goes on to explain this further in Sutras 5 and 6 as well. Now, Yukteswar Giri is talking about meditating on the sound of Om itself. There is a particular technique on the path of Kriya Yoga called the Om technique, where we actually use a certain apparatus. It's a wooden board that we use as an elbow rest. If you have seen Indian mythological cinema or TV series, then you see all these sages carrying this wooden thing that almost has a top like this and a wooden stick, almost like like a elbow rest. That's what it is. I don't know how else I can describe it. They carry it around all the time. It's because it's used for performing various yogic techniques. I never knew, growing up, you see all these rishis or sages in forest always carrying this. I don't know why they were carrying it or what it was. Later when I learned this technique, I understood that this is what the wooden apparatus looks like that you need as an elbow rest to practice this particular technique called the Om technique, where you listen to the sound of Om. You close your tragus of the ear with the thumb, and I'm not going to describe the technique here. If you're interested, you can contact Ananda or any organization that teaches Kriya Yoga. They may be able to help you. But essentially, we are trying to turn the senses inward and pay attention to that cosmic sound, the sound of the cosmic motor that is happening in our own astral spine. And it's a very, very beautiful, all-engrossing sound that we can hear in deep meditation. And sometimes, even when we are not deep in meditation, the sound is actually always there. And when we are able to pay attention, we can tune into that sound. And here Yukteswar Giri says, it's a very important and noteworthy statement. He says, it is the only way to salvation. The divine sound of Om is the only way to salvation, because we have to turn our senses inward and we have to start paying attention to that cosmic force, that cosmic motor that is drawing us towards God, towards Spirit, and that is the sound of Om. I'm going to read Sutras 5 and 6, which expand more on this idea. Om is heard through cultivation of Shraddha or heart's natural love, Virya or moral courage, Smriti, memory of one's divinity, and Samadhi or true concentration. Shraddha is intensification of heart's natural love. He's also describing how one can be successful in their meditation practices of turning these senses inward, of practicing listening to the sound of Om. Of course, he's talking about a specific way of meditating where we are paying attention to the inner sounds. But the things he's saying here are actually quite applicable to any form of meditation. So even if you're not familiar with the techniques I'm talking about, even if this is not something that is making full sense to you, even meditation in general, he's describing 4 things here. I'm going to just paraphrase what he's saying. Om is heard through cultivation of, but what he's essentially saying is you can go into deep meditation by cultivating Shraddha, which is heart's natural love, Virya or moral courage, Smriti, memory of one's divinity, and Samadhi, which is true concentration. Now, these 4 things, again, we are going to describe it even more in the future verses. They're quite important. Yukteswar Giri, in this translation, he often describes this phrase, uses this phrase, the heart's natural love. And this entire page, I'm looking at pages 56 and 57 in this edition that I have. I don't know if the page numbers are same across all editions. He says a lot about heart's natural love. And I just love that phrase, natural love. And he goes on to describe that even more, because this love that he's talking about, this love of the heart that he's talking about nurturing and developing, is the most natural part of us. What does natural even mean? What is purity? What is natural? Natural is the way we are all made. So when you're not feeling love, it is because we have become unnatural. So it is important to use that phrase and understand it in this particular sense, because We often think love is something that we have to get, we have to acquire, we have to create. But that's not at all what Yukteswar Giri is saying. Love is already there. You have to remove the impurities on top of it. And then you will be in that love, because that love is the heart's most natural part. I'm going to read a few words from his explanation. In fact, he starts this paragraph by presenting a very interesting idea. I'm just going to read it. I was sitting with this line, reading it over and over again to really see if that's what he was saying. Here Yukteswar Giri is writing, when this love appears in the heart, it removes all causes of excitation from the system, cools it down to a perfectly normal state, and invigorating the vital powers, expels all foreign matters, germs of diseases by natural ways. It thereby makes man perfectly healthy in body and mind, and enables him to understand properly the guidance of nature. So here Yukteswar Giri is saying, when that love of heart is developed, when we are able to feel that natural condition of being in love, not with something, in something, but just in love, this natural love that is upward focused and uplifting to our heart and soul, then he says that love will dispel germs that cause diseases from your body, and it will make you perfectly healthy. So it's an interesting idea for me to even think about when somebody is having a particular ailment or a disease. You know, I'm speaking to you right now. This is July, mid-July in the year 2022. And you know, all of us have been in this pandemic for however long. You know, it started March of 2020, as you all might very, very well remember. And now I'm talking to you from the San Francisco Bay Area where I live, and there is again a huge surge of the COVID virus. Now there is this new variant called BA.5. And you know, this is the fourth, fifth cycle of the cases spiking, and then now there is more increased masking and precautions everywhere so that we can contain the spread of the disease. And here Yukteswar Giri is saying the best way to expel these disease-causing germs from your body is to develop the natural love. So I don't know what else to say beyond that. I've been meditating on that sentence, and I want to protect myself, and I don't want to, you know, go through a disease or a difficulty in my own body. And here Yukteswar Giri is telling me personally, because it's been on my mind, trying to decide what is cautious of me to do and what is right and what is not. And the best guidance I can receive is develop the natural love of your heart, and it will expel all these disease-causing germs. I'm going to read more. This is a very famous line from this book, often quoted by various teachers, this particular paragraph, because here Yukteswar Giri says, when this love is developed, then man is able to understand the real position of his self as well as those surrounding him. He places love above everything else, not just any love, not the personal kind of love. He calls it the natural love of the heart, which is the heart's own state, default state. And then he goes on to say, without this love, man cannot live in the natural way, neither can he keep company with the fit person. He becomes excited often with foreign matters taken into a system. Through mistakes in understanding the guidance of nature and the consequences he suffers in body and mind, he can never find peace, whatever, and his life becomes a burden. Hence, the culture of this love is the principal requisite for the attainment of holy salvation. So he basically says, when we lose touch with that love of the heart, we face complete ruin. That's really what he's saying. And it's really, really important for us to think about an avatar speaking in this way about the importance of developing the love of the heart. Whatever that is, you know, doesn't even matter our particular personalities, what we are going through our lives, our interests, or what we are drawn to, what we are not drawn to. We just have to really, really think about this word love. That's the message of today, and coming from Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri. We have to think about what we love. Maybe you love cycling. Maybe you love being in nature. Maybe you love this particular friend of yours that you want to spend with. Maybe you love somebody romantically of the opposite gender or of the same gender. Whatever it may be, just to sit in that love, because even though that love may be personally directed towards a person or an object or an activity, its source lies in that natural state of the heart. And to go deeper into that source itself, to feel the origin of all this love that is coming through us, and to understand that this love is the panacea that we are all seeking, and this is the source of good health, vitality, happiness, bliss, of God realization. Everything is in that love, and that's what we are seeking. And the famous quote that follows this is, often people quote Sri Yukteswar Giri for saying this. It is impossible for man to advance one step towards the goal without it. We cannot take one step on the spiritual path without nurturing the natural love of the heart, because without that love, there is no way to draw that energy upward, to draw that energy towards the light, towards God realization. I think it was Yogananda Ji or Swami Kriyananda, I don't remember right now. They often would give this analogy over and over again, explaining this particular idea. You might be living, close to one of the best restaurants in the entire country, the most delicious food, and somebody may have given you, a coupon or something to have free meals there as much as you would like. What use would all of that be if you were not hungry? That hunger is the only way you can satisfy that desire for food. If that hunger was not present within you, it doesn't matter whether you're walking into the most delicious banquet in the whole world, whether you're going to the most expensive restaurant, you will not be satisfied. In the same way, God cannot come to us. We cannot reach these higher states of consciousness. We cannot experience this bliss of self-realization without being driven by the natural love of the heart. It is the first and the most important ingredient, and it is the fuel for our journey. I'm going to move on. And the other idea actually Yukteswar Giri presents here, which again will continue, I am in Sutra 7 and 8 of chapter 3 of this book, is the idea of Shraddha is the intensification of heart's natural love. I want to come back to that. So Sutra number 6 was Shraddha is the intensification of the heart's natural love. And verse 7 is moral courage or virya arises from Shraddha, directing one's love towards the Guru and from affectionately following his instructions. Again, if the heart's natural love is going to help you take the first step in your own spiritual journey, what is the next step? You might obviously ask, and he lays out the whole path in front of us. The first step is awakening that love, that prema. I'll read the Sanskrit verse also because for me it was helpful to understand the idea more deeply. Swabhavaja premanaha vega tivrata shraddha. Swabhavaja premanaha. The swabhava means your own nature, what is so instinctive to your own heart. That love, when that love intensifies, it becomes Shraddha. Now, Shraddha can be again translated in many different ways. Does he translate this word here? Interestingly, he does not. He just leaves the word Shraddha, and even in the English text, he just presents the word Shraddha. So I guess I'll translate it for you to the best of my knowledge. Shraddha simply means intense devotion. It means dedication. It means commitment. For some reason, Yukteswar Giri does not translate it. He just leaves the word at Shraddha. And he says this natural love intensifies into Shraddha. And this principle, just as we say willpower becomes energy, this principle is pretty generic. It is not just something that is applicable to the spiritual path. Just think of it, maybe all of you who are watching this are, past your teenage years, and maybe you have experienced first love towards somebody, maybe in your high school, maybe in your college, just this kind of attraction that might even be very much on the physical plane. But you feel that love and you want to nurture this relationship with this person. What is the next step that comes after that? What do you feel in your heart as soon as that love arises? The next step is that the love intensifies. You get committed. You become dedicated. You become devoted to either pursuing this person or pursuing a relationship if that person is also receptive to it, or whatever that the case may be. But you can really feel into what comes out of that heart when that love intensifies. And on the spiritual path, the same is applicable. The love cannot be kept lukewarm. We have to nurture that love and intensify it. It has to be intensified in the form of this devotion. But devotion almost is not even communicating the full extent of the word Shraddha, because Shraddha means commitment. It's conviction. It's one-pointedness. I cannot look away. I'm in love with this person. I'm so in love, I cannot stop thinking about them. It's not like I have to try to think about God. I have to try to not think about God, and I'm not successful because I'm so intensely in love. There's this beautiful story of Anandamoyi Ma This was from the first page, cover page of a book that a devotee had written, and he gifted me this book. He had spent many, many years with Anandamoyi Ma. And there was this beautiful exchange that I remember so well from the very first page of this book, where one devotee is asking Ma, we all call you Ma as in mother, and you call us Baba, which means father. So it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what he was saying, but I'm paraphrasing it for you. Why is that so? We call you mother and you're calling us father. Why is that so? Aren't we all your children? And then to that Ma responds by saying, mothers you will forget, but I am your child. Children you cannot forget. And that is such a beautiful way of thinking about it. Think of it in your own life. You can forget to call your mother, or you can forget to respond to her calls, or write to her, or see her. You can forget her birthday. Mother will always be there. She'll always be loving and kind to you. But if you had a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old child, will you be able to forget that child? Even if you had an evening off, even if the babysitter was there, even if you had dropped off the child at a friend's place, you cannot stop thinking. You're wondering, how is he doing? How is she doing? Is he okay? Did he eat dinner? Did he go to sleep? When can I come pick up? You're just constantly absorbed in the thought of this person. And that is the kind of intense love that we want to have for divine. It's not enough just to say, I love God. We have to yearn for it from our own hearts. Yoganandaji used to share the story where, a disciple went to a guru and asked for God realization, asked for higher states where he can actually experience God. And the guru dunked him into water and held him there until this person just got out of breath, and he pushed the guru's hand and came out of water and started breathing. And the guru asked this disciple, when you were underwater, when I was pushing you down, what did you want more than anything else? And the disciple said, I wanted air, I wanted to breathe. And the guru said, come to me when you want God like that. And that's what we are all going towards. It's what we want to develop, this intense love of the heart. And what comes from that? Virya, or moral courage. What does moral courage even mean? It's again a very unusual word. What we are referring to when we say moral courage, the essence of that quality is, it gives us, again, I'm going to use the same English word, it's the conviction to do what we know is in our own best interest. That's the question that Krishna asks Arjuna. Arjuna asks Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, why is it that I keep doing things that are not in my own best interest? And then, Krishna gives a beautiful answer. Passion it is, anger it is, things that draw you out through your senses and draw your energy downwards. That's what causes you to go through this endless cycle of birth and rebirth. Now, of course, that is moral courage. The moral courage is to be able to take charge, to bring ourselves out of that cycle, to say, this is what I'm going to do because this is what is in my best interest. Because just because we develop that natural love and the intensified devotion of the heart, we are not saved from all our tests. We might still have lessons that are left to learn. And we need a lot of moral courage because this is a battle. That's the whole image of the Bhagavad Gita that is presented in the Mahabharata, where we are pitted against, two parts of ourselves are pitted against each other. All those aspects of our nature that are drawing us down, and all those parts that are trying to uplift our energy. And this battle is happening between these two opposing forces, and we need moral vigor, and that comes from the intensified devotion of the heart, which comes from the natural love that we learn to nurture within ourselves. So let's see. We are in verse 7 and 8. I think I'll leave it here, and then I'll come back next week and we will pick up exactly from where we left. It was wonderful sharing another satsang with all of you. I'll see you again same time next week. Until then, God bless you.